Hello, Good Grief Festival, and welcome to Grief Chats with me, your host, Amber Jeffrey, the host of the Grief Gang podcast. In today's Grief Chat, we'll be having a conversation with two wonderful speakers who are joining us today to speak about their experience and their story. And mostly in particular, today's Grief Chat is on the topic of fleeing home and loss of life as we know it. And to talk about that today, I am joined by Dr. Rola and Afraa. Ladies, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you to invite me to be with you. So, thank you.
No, thank you. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I think it'll be really beneficial for the festival and all those who are tuning in. So to kickstart, ladies, I'd just love for you to take a couple of minutes just introducing yourself, a little bit introduction to you and your story and maybe a bit of the work that you're doing, and we'll touch way more into it later. Afraa, if you wouldn't mind.
Hello, everybody. My name is Afraa Hasham, Syrian political and humanitarian activist, forcibly displaced from my city, Aleppo, in Syria, and a mother of 3 children, Wissam, Zain, and Naya, previous teacher and previous school and child protection center manager, and especially in time of the emergency. Speaker in many panels as a Syrian activist and as a main character of the Oscar-nominated and BAFTA-winning film For Sama, which I participated to share my story as family suffered and survived from siege, starvation, and bombing.
Thank you, Afraa. And Dr. Rola?
So, hello everyone, my name is Rola Hallam and I am also Syrian. I am a doctor, a humanitarian and a human rights campaigner. And for the last decade, I've been working on the humanitarian and human rights response to the war on civilians in Syria. And so I founded CanDo, a humanitarian organization that works with frontline health and aid workers to help them provide health and protection for their war-affected communities. And together we built the first ever crowdfunded hospital and reached nearly 1 million people with our work. And I have also been on a huge grief, burnout and trauma journey these last 10 years. And so, yeah, definitely, I guess, fascinated by my own journey in that sort of space, as well as looking at it from my personal angle, as well as from how it impacts everyone who, like me, works on the front lines and their impact on their own well-being as a result.
Yeah, thank you so much. And you've touched perfectly then, and even in your pause then, I felt that then. Within my next question is, obviously this is for the Good Grief Festival. The grief is in the title. And there's a reason why you two are both here today, and to talk about the relationship and with not only the work and the experience we've done and your relationship to grief. So for you both, I just wanted to ask, what is your relationship to grief and how has grief shown up in your life?
My grief has a history that is more than 10 years old, since the start of the Syrian revolution and my participating in the peaceful movement. And what I witnessed from the campaign of the randomly arresting my friends and me as well, and then the bombing, which leading to the forcible displacement. I came out of this and I feel let down because you see that the innocence people had always to pay the price by through bombing them or besieging them or starving them. And all of which led to feeling of betrayal and brokenness the cruelest moment for me is the last moment before I leave in Aleppo, when I when I went to the streets to say goodbye to my city, which I was born, and in which I have memories, history, and heritage. I went out to the streets trying to record them as a tape through my eyes, to be as a memory, to remind me on my travels, to be incentive, the motivation to return, because I have the right to voluntary return. This is my history and my past. I went to my school to say goodbye also, but I found it totally empty and quiet. Started to write my last words to the people, that we are here, we were here, and we suffered from everything. And then I went to the graves to say goodbye to my friends who did through bombing, and talk with me, as you see here, soil from their graves. And this is remind me that I have right to come back someday to my city. So all these insights my grief and makes me feel depressed. But at the same time, I try to balance, because I have responsibility, duties towards my family, myself, and my country.
Wow, Afraa. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing as well that soil from your friend's grave. That's deeply personal, and thank you for sharing that with me. I'll take a minute. Rola, what's your relationship with grief? Yeah.
So I've been reflecting a lot on this recently, because this year has been the 10-year anniversary of the beginning of the war, and the revolution that started before it, where, you know, peaceful protesters took to the streets calling for freedom and dignity, and it's been 10 years of it. And it hit me hard. It hit me really, really hard. I just never in a million years thought we were going to be 10 years on. And I just found that I kind of just fell in a little heap after the anniversary in March, and it's taken me till now to pick myself up. And as I've reflected back over these last 10 years, I found that I had 3 grieving chunks, if I can call them that. I think the first one was in 2014, when essentially I just fell into a big burnt out mess. I think I joined the humanitarian effort thinking it was going to be a few days, oh, it's going to be a few weeks. After, maybe you thought the same, you know, it's just going to be a few months. And, you know, literally worked. I was living in the UK, and I was working every evening and every weekend and every holiday. I would go on a medical mission to Syria, and thinking this was going to finish soon. And my way of dealing with the atrocities and with the war and with everything that was going on was action, was let me do something about it. Let me leverage the fact that I'm a doctor in order to save lives. And so when I had that first collapse in 2014, I think at that stage, grief was just an avalanche of emotion. It was just an overwhelm. It was just all these repressed emotions, all that repressed sadness, all that repressed anger, all of these things that I had put aside thinking this is going to be over soon, it's time to act. And then it wasn't. And then it just kind of came out exploding out of me. But I think at that point, I hadn't given it the word grief, because I think think, how do you grieve when something is ongoing? How do you heal when the injury is happening every single day and is still ongoing? And so, and I didn't know the answers to these things, and I kept delaying my healing and delaying my grief even until the day it was over. Like, you know, you get this impression that like the grief starts, you know, when it's over, and it's not over. So what the hell are you meant to do when it's still going on, but you're accumulating all of this grief, you know? And so I think like the second jolt was, it was like a really, yeah, it was a huge time in my life. I was separating from my husband, and I was creating CanDo, and I was just going through a very big change. And I think that was the first time where I stood back and let it all come out and actually faced it as grief, and gave it space. And then I think this time now, at this 10-year anniversary is when I've actually really properly realized how much trauma there is at so many levels, you know, at so many levels, how it's impacted you personally, in whether it's the collapse of my marriage or the fact that it's radically altered my career path, and other sacrifices, or at the family level, we've lost more than 30 members of my family. And, you know, I remember the day my cousin called me and said, our lands that our ancestors have been tending to have been napalm, they're all gone, you know. But at the collective level, you know, me feeling Afraa's pain and her feeling mine, and the fact that all our lives have shattered into a million pieces, our whole country has shattered into a million pieces. And so my pain has become intertwined with the pain of everybody. And it's not a personal grief, it's a collective grief as well. And it can feel so overwhelming.
Yeah, and not only having, you say it's not just personal, it's collective too. Also, you have your personal grief, but you have then the added collective too. So, you know, you can both be in a position where, let's say, you know, you might be in a good space with your griefs and on some days, but you seeing somebody else who's from your community and from your experience in a not so good grief space, you can immediately be drawn into that, because you know you've been there before. You feel that collective grief for home. And I wanted to ask you,
well, just to add on that, and the collective grief, I don't know if you feel this, Afraa, isn't also just your community. Like my husband is from Bosnia. You know, when I'm in Bosnia and I'm meeting the grief that is still going on 22 years later after their war, you know, that collective grief and the need for collective healing isn't just necessarily, you know, your family or your community, but there's like this human level of grief of just how much war and violence and lives are torn as a result of it. And it all becomes intertwined, right? And if we don't recognize that, then we end up passing that on to the next generation.
Yeah. And I found it really interesting then as well, Rola, when you said that you didn't identify those feelings immediately as grief. And I think that might, I'm not saying, but, you know, grief is, well, the word grief itself, I think, is often tied to the death of a person. That's when you think of grief, you think it's death as a person, and that's immediately where it goes. So when you say out loud, no, I'm grieving for my homeland, some I can't resonate with that, because grief's connotation, or, you know, stigmatized with death, and it's not, grief is not just owned by the death of a loved one. Grief can manifest itself in so many things. And you, Afraa, speaking earlier about how when you stepped outside into your streets and almost taking like a visual tape, that's like for almost like, you know, the grief bank you want to in those grief moments. I can imagine you think back to that moment of taking back and going back into the school and writing your last message that we were here, and to tap back into that on those really heavy grieving days. But it's frustrating that grief is only connotated with the death of a person, and that it's got so many layers with it. And conversations like this, I think, are really great, so that, you know, you flee home, and that feeling is grief. And for people who may be watching today might be feeling, oh, that feeling inside that I'm feeling, that's not just me, I don't know, being off. This is grief, and it deserves to be acknowledged and recognised and treated as grief. I wanted to ask you both now as well, and Afraa, I know you said that when you think of your grief and how grief shows up for you, it's depressing. I wanted to ask you what has helped you, or what is helping you and your grief, and especially for you, Rola, right now, as you're saying, with this 10-year anniversary, it's bringing a lot for you. Where have you both turned to in these years for support, and what's helped? Afraa?
If you mean now I'm totally different from my when I was in Aleppo. When I was in Aleppo, I always used to be full of hope, and still do I. But you know that working with the most vulnerable group, with women and with children, to see their laughs, their smiles, that always give you the motivation to continue and give you the hope. But let me clarify an important point now, and I'm sorry to disappointed you, but who said that I totally overcame my my grief now? Believe me, I'm trying. I'm doing my best to overcome my sadness, and my pain. But after every attempt, a massacre occurs in my country suddenly, and that's may lead me to regain my old memory flashbacks, and that's make me feel that I'm disappointed and or hopeless. So this is what is going on. I don't know if Rola, you know that what's happening now today. After every massacre, after every attack, especially for the students or the schools or any civilians, innocent people, that give you the feeling of that I'm helpless, I can't do anything. So, but at the same time, it is my responsibility, our duty to wrestle with our grief, pain, and be strong for the rest who are still now in danger, because in time of crisis there is no time to grieve. Our grief is like postponed and until like a further notice.
You say, you know, you touching then, I feel like, yeah, it's what we maybe even asking what has helped you in your grief, and as you touched on, Rola, as well, when it's something is so ongoing, when is the time to heal, and when is the time to tap into that help? And that notion of like grief is forever, and we're in this forever, and it's those little pockets or people or resources that can help us along the way. But as you said, Afraa, with every massacre and every disaster, it's triggering every time. You can get so far in your grief journey, and even seeking support and feeling more.
And that happened when Rola, you remember, Rola, when you called me and asked me how can we support these people, their mental health, their how can give them the psychological support. So now we are in safe country, but still we our hearts in our country. Being here is not meaning that we are having the stability, or we having the security from our side inside.
Yeah, your heart is there.
Actually, Afraa, when I asked you that question, you said two really important things that maybe you want to expand on now. You told me the importance of community and the importance of feeling a sense of your own power to heal yourself. Do you remember? That's what you told me when I asked you that. I wonder if you want to expand on those, because they were so beautiful and clearly how you've helped yourself and how you've helped others around you.
Yeah, being inside Aleppo as like a leader woman, that all the women trust you and look at you that you are the strong. So I I can't be weak or feeling that I'm sad, I'm broken. I have to be all the time, I'm strong, because this is my position, and the leadership has this responsibility. And in the same time, seeing, as I mentioned from the beginning, seeing the people who you are helping them. Of course, this is my duty, of course, but being that, giving them the help, that maybe reduce your sense of guilty, maybe now that we are here, and we are equal to them, we are sharing their suffer. So maybe that defeats our grief or our fear or anything, or disappointing. But now we are here, we are not sharing the same circumstances. So that's why give you the sense of guilty, and at the same time that you are helpless. We are trying our best to raising awareness everywhere through this event and every event, but that doesn't change anything. Doesn't change the reality inside Syria.
Just you touched there, and I wanted to ask you, and if I'm out of place, I wanted to ask: do you feel that's, and this is off course, it's just come to mind as you've been speaking, then Afraa, do you think that survivor's guilt plays into your grief? That do you think that survivor's guilt is a part of your grief, being and to seek you to safely seek refuge? And
of course,
yeah,
after displacement, I felt that why I survived and my friends couldn't. So that's the feeling that maybe I had to be instead of them. And I spent more than 7 months in a depression case, and totally. And after the film for Sama appeared to the world and starting the people communicating with me, asking me about what's happening in Syria, in that time I started to say, oh, wow, now I got the answer why I am here, maybe to complete what my friends couldn't complete. So my mission is still ongoing. So then I thought that, I still have missions, incomplete missions till now. So I have to continue to be more strong and to defeat that feeling.
Yeah, that's what spurred you on. Thank you. Rola, how about you? What's particularly in this last, since March till now, where your grief has really been showing up? What's been helping you?
I think I realized that one of the things that have hampered me the most have been how belittling I am and have been of my grief and of my pain and of my suffering. Because I think as a frontliner, as a health giver, as a caregiver, you are on a mission to help and support others. Your job is to make other people feel better. And so you get this thing that, healing is over there. It's not within. You are here to serve other people. And I think that, the moment that I start to touch in on my own pain or my suffering, like immediately there's this like voice that goes, yeah, but it wasn't your child who was killed. It wasn't your mother who was raped. It wasn't your house that was bombed, and immediately I would shut down and really minimize my own pain and suffering and sort of put it away. And I think one of the most profoundly important things that I have found helpful to my own journey recently has been self-compassion.
And
to be able to just sit there with myself and recognize my own pain and my own suffering and my own sacrifices, and just give space to that and allow it and be kind to myself. And it's just, I feel like none of us really, or very few of us really truly understand compassion. Because I think most of us, and me included until very recently, are actually in empathy. And empathy is where the ego comes in. You know, I want to, you know, it happened today, you know, like Afraa knows there was bombings in northern Syria, a school was bombed and 3 children have died. And I was reading that and I immediately started to think, oh my God, I'm a mother to a toddler. I can't, what if Naya died? And, you know, as soon as I had that thought, I put my phone down. I was like, I don't want to read this. Right? Because I was taking that pain literally onto myself, and it became an ego thing. It became about me and my pain. And then, and that's repulsive, you know, that, and when we talk about compassion fatigue, actually what we're really referring to is empathy fatigue, because we end up bringing it into ourselves. But compassion, true compassion, doesn't fatigue. You know, as soon as I had that realization, and because I've been working so much on it, I was able to I just sat there and just imagined the mothers in front of me, and I just said, I can't take your pain away, but I can be with you in this pain. And I just sent them a prayer, and I just sat with them across the divide. I don't know who they are, they don't know me, but I hope that they got my love energy and my prayers. And I think in my journey of connecting to my own compassion and to my own being in my own darkness with my own sadness, I'm so much better at being able to sit with other people's grief and other people's darkness and other people's sadness in a way that, just as I turned away from my pain before, I was turning away from some people's pain because it was too much. And I'm just learning how to be with it all, connected, but with a boundary, with love, with a space that can hold it, but not crush me.
Yeah. Wow. I think that's a real lesson for people, is in the clear distinction of empathy and compassion. It's so true what you said there. We do, I think, especially in grief, and I think even more so for people who haven't been bereaved, if they hear our stories and other people's, the first thing they do is kind of envision themselves in that. And it's, for some, that might make it easier for them to really think what it's like for a day in the life in some of our shoes, but sometimes it's not needed. You can be there for somebody and support them and comfort them without making it all about you. And what you did in that moment, Rola, I think, yeah, it's commendable. Thank you, ladies. And now I wanted to ask you about some of your amazing work that you've both done. You both and are doing commendable and fantastic things. And so I wanted to ask you, in the work that you're doing, how do you support the people in your communities and in your work? How do you support and educate them about their grief and how to have, you know, mental health maintenance? Afraa, would you know?
Yeah. Actually, currently I'm working in the field of advocacy campaigns that shed lights in the suffering in my country. So most of my communication with the Syrian people, of course, with the our work through advocacy to reach the whole world, but my communication with the Syrian people who are still under threat. So my role here is to always give them hope in order to continue to reach their voice and their suffering to the world. And how, for example, how can I sow hope while the violation continue in conjunction with the international silence? But when I tell them that we have nothing to do, we have to continue because we have detainees are waiting for their freedom. We have displaced people living in tents and waiting for their voluntary return to their homes, and we have the relatives of victims who are waiting for the justice. So we have nothing except hope. We have to continue to share our story. our rights to have, this is our right to have our freedom and our social justice. So that through my participating, also my participating in such events, sharing their story and telling them that I'm doing my best and this is my duty. It's not like I'm doing this because I am good. No, this is my duty.
Mm-hmm.
So that maybe give them hope that the people care of them. Because when I was in Syria and see you or Rola or anybody doing his best, that give me that I'm not alone, that people care of me. So yeah.
That speaks so much to me, Afraa. It's our duty, it's our mission to be not the voice for, you know, the voices, because these people have voices, but to amplify them and show that these people are still here.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to shut up until you hear them and you listen to us. That speaks to me. Thank you, Afraa. And Dr. Rola, I cannot wait to hear all about CanDo. Please tell me and the listeners all about the CanDo organisation and the work you're doing there.
Thank you. So I think that on the story of CanDo really started on one of my medical missions when working in one of the 7 hospitals I'd helped to set up. I witnessed a war crime and a school was bombed, and I had an influx of severely burnt children who came to my hospital requiring emergency care. And undoubtedly one of the worst days of my life that is just etched on my heart, mind and soul. And it just breaks my heart beyond belief that it is happening till this very day. Over 1,000 schools have been bombed, not accidentally, but as part of the strategic targeting of civilians that's happening in Syria. And so what I'd really realized that day was that the reason people survive in crisis is because of the remarkable people of the work in crisis themselves. You know, people survive because of the local doctors and nurses and aid workers and teachers, the people who are from the very affected community, who are daring to be and work where others can't or won't. And I realized that those people, the lifesavers, the frontliners in these war devastated places, are not getting the resources that they needed. And so millions of, you know, when you multiply that across the different countries of the world, like that is so much suffering that is happening needlessly. And so I founded CanDo with the idea of getting these resources directly to the front lines, to frontliners' hands. And it's, you know, it's so important that we all feel empowered to be part of our own solution, that, you know, we're not waiting for someone to come and save us. We are busy trying to save ourselves, but what we need is people to stand up together with us and say, I'm here with you. What do you need? And so, you know, on our platform, we support these local health and aid workers to create crowdfunding campaigns in order to help their communities. And so, you know, the campaign we have at the moment is called Saving Syria Schools. And it's exactly because I just got fed up of treating burnt children. You know, these children should not be getting injured in the first place. And seeing as we can't stop the war despite our efforts, you know, we wanted to install an alarm system, an early warning system into the high-risk schools that can give up to 7 minutes of a warning before a potential strike, so that children and their teachers can either evacuate or get to, you know, a safe place before an attack, so that we can try and save some of these lives that are being senselessly lost through this ongoing bombing. And so a strong component of, you know, advocacy, storytelling is so important as well. And like you said, like there's my voice, but there's also giving voice to people. And so, you know, we've created 2 BBC Panorama documentaries Saving Syria's Children, as well as a recent one this year, Syria Schools Under Attack, where people are getting to tell their own stories of, you know, the survivors and the victim families. And because it's so important that people are able to tell their own stories of survival, of resilience, of lives shattered and of lives rebuilt. And I'm just honored. I'm honored every day to just wake up and be able to support the kind of heroic frontliners that I work with.
Yeah, I want to add something that every time I watch Dr. Rola in any event, that really support me as a woman, because having such an amazing superhero female doctor, Syrian doctor, participating such in this events, trying to share our stories, so that gives me the resilience to continue, that I want to do my best. So somehow we can support each other. Every leader woman can even give the other that, yeah, look at Rola, look at Wad, look at all these women, they are still strong.
Yeah, Afraa, yeah, look at Afraa too.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So we are still strong, so we have to be like that.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the one thing I wanted to add is that, especially now during the pandemic, you know, before my work was focusing on sort of helping frontliners in war zones, especially Syria, but now, you know, the frontliners everywhere and frontline health workers everywhere are burnt out and facing trauma. And so, you know, the focus of you know, on the one hand, I've got the Save Syria Schools campaign, and please go to savesyriaschools.org and see if you can support our campaign. But I think back to your point about how to support mental health, I think it's frontliners are often not given, they don't give themselves, just as I didn't give myself the ability and that space to acknowledge my own pain and suffering. And often they are looked at as heroes when actually we're just human beings like everyone else, and we hurt like everyone else. And actually, you know, we need to make sure that in order to continue on the front lines, that we're not just barely surviving, but that we are thriving. And that means giving ourselves what we need to look after ourselves, body, mind, and soul, you know, and giving that. Sometimes it's about that space, that break, you know. We cannot be expected to just continue.
No.
Right? You have to give yourself that time to say, time out. You know, everyone always says it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I'm like, no. You know what it is? It's a relay. It's a relay. You're meant to run for a bit, and then you hand the baton over to someone else and you say, I'm tired, I need a break, off you go. And then I'm like, okay, go on, give it to me, I'm going to do the running now. And then you know, and then I'll run to someone else, and then I'll stop and take a break, and then someone else will run. And that's how you work as a team, and how you work in tandem, and how you work in support, and rest and recharge is built into your mentality, instead of being this thing that you only do when you're crawling on like your last bit of battery, and even then you feel guilty and weak for it. Like we've got it so wrong and so warped, and it doesn't help us, and it doesn't help the cause, and it doesn't help the people that we serve. And so, you know, I'm definitely on a bit of a mish. As you can see, I got all excited just then, didn't I? Like, you know, and to share, in sharing my personal journey,
yeah,
tell people, like, honor yourself.
Yeah. And especially in the work that you do in the environment that you're both working, the people that you work in, it's trauma. And how can you bring your best self into that space when you are not, and have not dealt with your own trauma and your own grief? And when you do that, you can deliver your best self and show up for these people. Well, ladies, is there anything else you would like to direct the people to go to? What some support systems, some resources that for anybody watching who may be displaced or even supporting other communities? Is there any like resources that people can turn to off the top of your heads? Obviously CanDo. Mm-hmm.
My message on that is your resources are all around you. They are the people around you. They are your friends, your family, even your colleagues. Most of us isolate ourselves in our pain. We shut down, we don't share, and in that make ourselves so lonely, and we put walls around our grief and our pain, and we imprison ourselves within it, and then we feel so lonely and isolated. And it doesn't have to be this way. We all need to embrace that, the power of vulnerability, and reach out and say, I'm hurting, I need help, because I think that just that you're going to have open arms and people who say, come, I'm here, you're not alone. And honestly, I think that's the best resource that I can share. That and prayer, that for me is definitely God is always there. So yeah, if in doubt, ask for help.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Afraa, any last words?
Yeah, as Rola mentioned, ask for help. Maybe you can communicate with the GP, the psychiatrist, to ask him, because sometimes you have to, including the negative charges that and the cumulative memory that increases the feeling of grief. So especially for me or people like us as a fresh survivor, so how can we adapt with the new situation and the new atmosphere if we don't release ourselves from all these flashbacks and all of this experience? Speak to the people who trust, and sometimes when people, foreign people, communicate with me and showing their support, that give me the feeling that I'm strong, because they can see my strong, so I'm strong, so I don't have to be like this. So, and if you are lucky enough to have somebody like Rola or my friend Wat, so please communicate with him and speak with him directly.
Problem shared is a problem halved, isn't it?
Yeah, and sharing our story helping us to recover. When you share your pain with the people, and the people listen to you and feeling that, yeah, we can understand your pain and your experience.
Yeah. Amazing advice, ladies. Wow, that is the end. What a fantastic conversation. I can't thank you enough. Enough has really touched me. I could talk to you for hours, and I'm sure we will speak after.
My tears. I know.
I'm like,
I know. When you said what you said, I was like, oh.
Right, let's sign off. Good Grief Festival. Thank you so much for watching this grief chat. I have been your host, Amber Jeffrey. Thank you.